I'm Debbie Holloway with Crosswalk.com, and today we're speaking with Rich Stearns, president of World Vision, and his wife Renee on their new book, He Walks Among Us, from Thomas Nelson. There are so many people and countries in this book that seem so far away from where I live today, where we live in America. So how do you go about convincing American Christians to care deeply about the rest of the world?
What really gets to the heart of people is stories. If you tell them the story of a little girl who is a Syrian refugee living in Jordan in a refugee camp, who now can't go to school, maybe she watched her father killed as they escaped and fled the country, and you kind of create this picture of what this is doing to human beings. And that's what we try to do in this book. But it's not just a book about poverty and suffering. It's a book about life and courage and hope and faith. And we really believe that we have much to learn from the poorest people on our planet.
You know, I often describe my friends as great people, but they live in a very small world, limited understandably by their own personal experiences. And goodness knows, up till 15 years ago, that certainly could have described us. And if we're honest, oftentimes the way I live my life is, my world looks only as big as the space between my house, the grocery store, the local mall, and my church maybe. But the truth is, it's a big world out there. And so if we can introduce people to a world that they might never see, but whom God loves nonetheless, we've done what we hope to do.
This book is full of stories. Can you guys talk to us about the power of story in reaching people and reaching people for Christ?
Well, I think that statistics can only convey so much. They speak to the mind, but sometimes we need to have our hearts engaged. And so by telling the story of a woman and her family, the challenges she faces, the hopes and dreams that she has for her children, we think really help to engage people. And the objective being, of course, that we will do something about it.
And stories really bring things alive and make them personal. And why did Jesus use parables in the New Testament to teach? Because he understood that stories communicated in such a rich way to people. And who of us attending our Sunday services comes home and doesn't really remember the stories more than we remember some of the other things in the sermon? The stories tend to stick with us.
I don't know if you can, but if you could sum up one overarching message of the book, what do you think it would be?
It's hard to summarize one, but I think the title does sum it up. He walks among us, that God is at work all around the world. He is at work with the poorest of the poor. And in fact, I think we can see from the reading of the New Testament that if you want to get closer to Jesus, get closer to the poor. And their lives are so rich in faith, rich in courage, rich in life experience. We have so much we can learn from their lives that really have application to our lives as well. And I think anyone that reads this book will be inspired and lifted up by seeing what God is doing around the world in the lives of people.
And I think the challenge is to realize that the things that separate us are not nearly as big as the things that bring us together. My very first trip with World Vision, I found myself in a dump in Guatemala City. And I stood watching a mother and her two little children, and the little boy was eating out of a dirt-encrusted yogurt cup as he stood digging around in the trash. And I thought back, and my kids were probably having a hot lunch in the school cafeteria. But when I bent down to talk to the children, I saw that the mother was smiling, and she was pleased that I had paid attention to her little kids. And I identified with that. She was a mom like me, and we have the same kinds of hopes and dreams and expectations for our children. So if people will go away from reading the book feeling closer to the people that we met, understanding that we have all been created in God's image and that He loves all of us, and in fact has invited us to participate in His work in the world, I think we'll have done what we hope to do.